Hey everybody, you're logged on to the Trenternet. Trent here with a very exciting treat for you today. So one of the long lost relics in the Castlevania series has always been Castlevania The Arcade. I'm not talking about Haunted Castle, I'm talking about Castlevania The Arcade. So as you can see behind me, this was an arcade game developed for the arcade, oddly enough, called Castlevania or Akumajao Dracula The Arcade. And it was kind of just a standalone concept. It doesn't have a place in the Castlevania original timeline or the Lords of Shadow timeline. It's kind of like its own unique thing. And the premise is there are 3 vampire hunters, really 2. The third one's kind of a secret. And you pick one of them and you go through a rail shooter Castlevania environment to defeat Dracula. The catch is that this used an absolutely massive Giga Chad sized stand-in cabinet with an IR sensor remote, which was kind of like a Wii remote, if you can imagine. And so in the arcade, you would stand inside this cabinet and you would wield this wand thing and use it to whip the screen just like you were a Belmont or something. Now there are 3 characters. There's the vampire hunter who uses the Belmont whip. That's him there. There's also the lady gunner who also uses the same kind of gameplay but with a few quirks because she's a gunner. The excuse is that she uses a bayonet. And then there's the little witch who, if you can imagine Carrie Fernandez, only maybe a little bit younger and using more magic spells than just energy bolts. That's the little witch. All of them have similar gameplay. You basically whip at the screen to attack, or you use sub-weapons as kind of a traditional rail shooter projectile weapon. So you can kind of see you can see the demonstration of the guy back here, what he's doing. That's how this thing would have been played in the arcade. And so this thing languished in a few locations across the world for years until recently it was brought onto PC by some very, very cool guys who have been working very hard to get this working. It's still not working 100%, so I will warn you there are no sound effects. That's not some weird video thing, that's just what it takes to get this running at the moment. They're still working on that. So hopefully there will be an updated release and the sound effects will work. But as for now, you can play through the whole game. There are some fixes required, so if there are bugs, I'll have to make edits and cuts. I did have to patch some things and move some things around to get A, the controls working, and B, all the levels to load. But anyway, we're just going to do a playthrough of this right now. I'm going to give you my commentary. It's going to be kind of like my mini review / playthrough. So let's do this. So in the arcade, you would stand. It would have like a place for you to stand, and then you would take the remote. And so all of these characters, they play roughly the same. Where they change up a little bit is like their special mechanics of their sub-weapons. So the vampire hunter, he uses like the Belmont axe, the holy water, the cross. The little witch has like fire spells and ice spells. And the lady gunner gets different types of bullets. I did a playthrough earlier as the vampire hunter, so I'm going to do the lady gunner. And we're going to see what happens. I plan to post playthroughs of all 3. But I'm going to go with lady gunner for this one just so that it's new to me. But the overall gameplay is roughly the same. So don't think that, because you're not playing the Belmont, you're missing some huge gameplay difference. There are some different mechanics, but for the most part, it's the same game. Just the sub-weapons are mainly what's different. The little witch can charge her sub-weapons, which is neat. But I'll kind of show you what that means and how that works once we get going. So this is just a little tutorial. I'm going to let it run for the sake of showing as much of this game off as possible because the vast majority of people have not been able to play it. And shout outs to YouTuber Video Game Esoterica, who kind of got the ball started on this and kind of announced that this was out here and got the ball rolling as far as getting the controls hooked up and working. And there are still people working on making this work better, which is awesome. It's amazing to see that this is going to be preserved for everybody. So you can see her special is the Higambana attack. So you can lock onto enemies with the power gauge and then fire on them. I'm not sure what the vampire and the little witch, they have special abilities too. But I didn't watch this when I played through as the vampire hunter, so I'm not sure what his is. So you can see there is a story down there. The small village surrounded by the deep forest was turned into the land of the damned since the devil appeared. Of course, talking about Dracula. The ruins are lit by torches in places. However, there is no life here except the ugly and awful dead bodies. The English translation for some of the stuff in this is kind of wonky, but just bear with me. It's well enough that you can play through the game. So you can see you swing the whip controller, and it's kind of a rail shooter with melee attacks. And Castlevania, this isn't the first time a rail shooter with melee attacks has been done, but it's the first time Castlevania's done it. And I have kind of a love-hate relationship with it, just because of the way sub-weapons work. So you can see down here in the bottom left corner, I have 49 out of 50 bullets. That's your sub-weapon. So if I were the vampire killer, for example, I'd be using daggers or holy water. The lady gunner uses different bullet types for her sub-weapons. And so the reason I have a love-hate relationship with it is you whip candles, just like in the normal Castlevania, to get sub-weapon ammo and power-ups, but you can very rarely whip them. You have to use your sub-weapon to fire on it because your character will not walk close enough to, like those barrels over there and things, to whip all of them. So what you have to do is kind of play strategically with your sub-weapon / bullet ammo to make sure that not only can you hit enemies, but you can also break open crates and stuff to get sub-weapon ammo as you need it. So you kind of have to play this careful balancing act, which I think is a great idea, but it's also very annoying because you don't really get hearts any other way unless your character happens to walk close enough to something for you to whip it. And as we play through this, you'll see what I mean by that. So like there will be lots of times where there'll be enemies in the distance, but I can't hit them because I don't have sub-weapon ammo or they're just not close enough to me. And so I miss out on that. A lot of these enemies will walk close to me in this first level, but as we get later on, you'll see enemies that like won't ever approach you. And like all these barrels are damageable, but if I had run out of ammo, I couldn't shoot them. I'd have no way of hitting them. Also, I just have to stop and say that the music in this game is amazing. It uses pretty much just all remixes of classic Castlevania songs, and they're all really, really good. They're all so good. They're all orchestrated. Konami definitely spent some time and effort on this thing, which I wish they would spend this much time and effort on everything Castlevania they do. Grimoire of Souls. But sadly, no. We don't get this. And so like some of these headstones, not all of them will be able to be damaged. But we don't know which ones, and we have to use our sub-weapon ammo to break them to get these coins here. And so I'm not really sure about the coins. So like if you watch, there's 3 buttons on the controller. And so I can scroll between sub-weapons here. And these coins basically let you use your score, your points, as sub-weapons to throw. And that's a setting that you have to turn on or off in the game settings menu, whether it gives you that option or not. I've got it turned on here, and it really helps with the shooting things at a distance when you don't have ammo, but it takes your score, and your score is actually very important in this game, as you'll see once we beat Death here, the first boss. Like I said, music is just awesome, and I can't wait for them to get sound effects working. So you can see when I've got this metal selected, there's a silver one and a gold one. I decrease my score in return for being able to throw a projectile. So you really want to use your sub-weapon ammo carefully, especially if that setting is turned off. The Lady Gunner, of course, you want to be using more sub-weapon ammo because she gets more. Her sub-weapons are pretty much all like 1 bullet per, except for the shotgun. So it's kind of makes you think that her design was to be more of a sub-weapon focused character. So Death just runs away. We don't actually get to finish him off in this first level. Also, the level complete jingle is super loud compared to the music in the rest of the game. I'm not sure what the deal with that is, but that's a thing. So you can see there we got bonus point, secret item, achieve target score. We got an S. So we get that bonus point down there, and you use that to increase your stats. So that's actually a pretty interesting concept for a rail shooter. You usually don't have things like that. So Lady Gunner, she's going to use sub-weapon ammo, so we may power this up once, but we're going to power up our sub-weapon mostly. You get hearts every time you continue, so I really didn't see the point in powering up sub-weapon max. I'm not going for like a 1 credit clear or something like that. Maybe if you were, you would use that. But for the most part, the playthroughs I've done, I've always just powered up the main weapon and then the sub-weapon. You can also restore health, like buy health restores, but if you're playing on free play, it doesn't really matter because you're going to get your health back when you die and continue. So yeah, maybe something to work for on a 1 credit clear. So there's 5 chapters. We've made it to chapter 2. The first level is extremely short, but they get a little longer as you go in. And so you may notice that circle that appears around enemies. I can't whip them or strike them with the melee until that circle appears. That lets me know, hey, this guy's within striking distance. I can shoot them, but again, it uses my sub-weapon ammo up. And just like in other Castlevanias, all the candles give hearts and sub-weapons and power-ups. And so it's basically any candle that is lit will give you a power-up of some kind. If it's not lit, it will not. And occasionally enemies will drop stuff as well. As you saw, that guy dropped a piece of chicken. One thing I really do like about this rail shooter experience is that your character will actually make an effort to dodge things, which is nice, but you'll still end up shooting those things to dodge them, and there'll be a fight later where I'll point that out to you. But yeah, you know, most rail shooters, you're just in first-person perspective, and your character just kind of moves, and they just kind of stand still, and they expect you to do all the shooting to protect them. But in the case of this, they've made it a little bit more realistic, probably because of the first-person cabinet and the experience where the player character actually moves to dodge attacks on their own. So stuff that comes at you, what you'll do is you'll see the character move out of the way, and then you'll shoot the projectile before it comes back. So you still get the challenge, but it also looks like the character has some semblance of self-preservation, which is really nice. I really like that. One thing I don't like about these candles is when you shoot them to get the power up, it darkens the environment, which I understand why. That makes perfect sense. But at the same time, it's very annoying that I can't see as well. So maybe I would have just not used real-time lighting here or something like that. It's probably the first time that's ever been said. You can shoot these chairs, but I'll say I found a new power-up. I've never even found that before, so it's like a rifle bullet or something. It uses three hearts each, so it must be pretty powerful. Your sub-weapons are missable, which is one thing you have to kind of pay attention for in this game. You want to be shooting everything that you possibly can until you get all 3 of them, because you can miss your weapons in this. And you're really going to want those for the later boss fights because they're fairly tough. And see, as I grab these hearts, it makes things go dark. Yeah, I can't wait for them to get the sound effects working because I think it's going to increase the experience tenfold to hear like the monster sounds and everything as you go through this. But the music is just excellent. I love the music. I realize that some people would say, well, they should have made more original music, but I mean, the Castlevania library as it is just so good. Orchestrating all those old Castlevania tunes was just the way to go for this. I think it really was. So we have our second boss, the Bone Dragon. White Dragon. White Dragon is immortal, immune to pain and suffering. It will be no easy task. So you get some of these sort of like, it's not really English, but it's like on the borderline of it kind of thing. So some of the bosses are kind of cheap. You know, Area 51 shoutouts to James Mestamaker, was always a really good FPS, and that it kind of made it really clear to you what you needed to shoot to avoid taking damage. But there's a lot of situations with bosses in this thing where the hit indicator pops up and you take damage so fast you had no clue. Like, unless you were just had some godlike reaction time, you were not going to whip that thing in time to avoid damage. And again, I get it's an arcade game, but this was a very expensive arcade game. I mean, you can look up a picture, go Google Castlevania The Arcade cabinet. The thing is gigantic. It's huge. So I can't imagine that it would cost less than $1 minimum to play this thing in the arcade. Any arcade would have been charging $1, $2 to make back their initial investment, because this would have been a very expensive cabinet. I just don't see how it possibly couldn't have been. All right, so you can see my hearts are really low, so I would have to swap to using coins if I wanted to continue firing. So I need to try to find some hearts. There's a switch behind that painting. We'll see if we can hit it. There we go. So there's still lots of secrets to be found in this game. There are some alternative paths and things like that. I found one last night when I was playing. You'll see later when we get to the castle rampart, there's a bell you can ring to go to a secret level. The music seems to have stopped. Hopefully it comes back because there's some really good music later on. But like I said, there's bugs and problems, so I would not be surprised if the music just stopped. But hopefully it'll catch back up here in a second. Here it comes. Okay, good. So we're stocking up on our sub-weapons here. You can whip the chairs here, but I don't know that they provide anything. They're just kind of fun to break apart. And we're back. I'm sorry about that. Like I said, this thing is a little buggy, so I had to restart. Fortunately, the game has a debug function which lets you skip between levels, so I just used that to get back to where we were. So if you play the game in full screen, the game basically stops drawing itself if you do anything to the window, and so I accidentally clicked off the window and I paid the price for it. You can play the game in windowed mode to avoid that problem. However, it currently will not render any levels, so the levels are just completely black. You can't see anything, so obviously impossible to play the game with. So I'm sure there is some way to work around that or fix that. I don't know what it is, sadly. So I just had to restart things. There may be some more jump cuts in here. Unfortunately, that means I lost the power-ups I had. So I'm not trying to cheat you or show you some sort of cheated run. But if I'm going to continue to show you this run, sacrifices have to be made until this thing is fully patched and working, I'm afraid. So we are back as the Lady Gunner. We're on level 2. I just restarted recording at the same place we were at. So and in a game that involves swinging a whip around, swinging your mouse around like it's a whip, that's unfortunately bound to happen. So there may be another one of these cuts at some point. I really hope not. I'm going to try my best to avoid letting my cursor slip down to the bottom of the screen or the side and that happen. It was kind of a pain to get OBS to record this thing. I had to set it to record everything in one monitor, basically. Start recording on my desktop and then launch the thing and do it that way. I swear there's like 13 different remixes of Vampire Killer in this game, and every one of them slaps, so I'm not complaining. The soundtrack for this game is available on YouTube, by the way, because it was released. Konami released a big collection of Castlevania music that was something like 20 discs a couple years ago, and this game was fortunately included. Alright, so here's our next boss, Dullahan. Classic Castlevania series boss. There's a rumor of a headless knight. It was a Brutus Slay. I couldn't read that in time. Alright, you got this awesome Bloody Tears remix. Okay, so did you see how she jumped out of the way of the first one of those and I was expected to shoot the second one? You'll see that a lot. Most rail shooters would just have you have to stand still and shoot them all. But this game, the character actually tries to preserve their life a little bit, which is kind of nice. I like that. This boss I found to have really inconsistent damage. Sometimes you would get hit by this thing and it would barely do any damage to you, and then sometimes I've been almost one-shot by this boss. So it's kind of wacky. And maybe they're expecting you to buff your health with your score in between rounds, but I just like to go for damage because, I mean, it's a fairly short game anyway. Gosh, the remix is so good. I really like the first person movement. It really makes you feel like you're in first person and the character is actually moving and like you're fighting, as opposed to something like Revolution X or Terminator 2 where the character's perspective is just fixed and all you do is shoot. There's no movement whatsoever. I really like that touch. It's really nice. So there, despite my my screw up and clicking off screen, we've cleared the chapter and we get a C, unfortunately. So let's just power up our sub-weapon so that we can use as many bullets as possible. We're the lady gunner. We need to be gunning. So all of this would have sound effects if it was working, which unfortunately it's not. They're still working on the sound effect thing. Waking up from the long fall, there is a fusty smell and only darkness. It seems to be a dungeon in the castle. There is no sign that it has been used for a long time. However, it is easy to imagine the destiny of the imprisoned criminals here. This is definitely some near English. The air is damp, and someone's aura can be felt on the skin. The souls of those who suffered violent deaths are still present. And again, I wish we had sound effects so we could hear the creepy ghost sounds here. This stage in particular introduces a lot of enemy variety. The first two stages you're primarily just fighting with skeletons the whole time, but this one actually throws in some ghosts and some flea men and some other Castlevania favorites that fans have come to expect throughout the years. I presume there would be whip sound effects as well, but unfortunately we don't get to hear any of them until the sound is fixed. Now this guy has a lot of health. I know I could try to whip that candle on the right of the screen, but I'm really trying to avoid having to reset and go through a new level playthrough and all that again. Get off my mood. Sometimes enemies seem to die in one hit, and then sometimes you just shoot them and hit them repeatedly and they don't. So I'm not sure if there's some sort of critical hit thing or what, but it does seem like sometimes enemies go down a lot faster than others. Now we got another classic Castlevania boss. It's the Minotaur. You're going to see a lot of that player dodging here. My character will actually make an effort to not be trounced by this big monster here. I really wish I had that shotgun and that rifle bullet sub-weapon that we lost, but can't be helped. We've got this really nice remix of Walking on the Edge from Castlevania 1. And again, when you shoot the candles, it makes it so dark you can't see the scenery, which is, I mean, it's fairly nice for 2009 graphics, so I wish that that wasn't the case. Understand why they did it, but wish it wasn't the case. I thought that was a crate or something. It was just an old door. See, I got that critical hit. He had a little bit more health than I expected, but the weird critical hit thing activated. He's got the Logarius wheel from Bloodborne. So we'll jump over the barrel here. And most levels have two bosses. Like this level, there's going to be another boss at the end of it. So they really put a lot of effort into bosses in this. It's a nice Castlevania 3 remix in the background here. Oh, we picked up something. I don't know what that was. A lot of the times if you shoot enemies that are kind of like far off in a hard to reach place, you get like a special bonus like health up or a sub-weapon or something for it. So you always want to try to shoot the enemies that are like hidden way off in the background, because they usually drop special stuff. Water Dragon. The Water Dragon always top of food chain before Dawn of Humanity, and that's as much as I could read, sadly. This is actually a fairly cool fight too. I actually like this. As far as railgun shooter fights go. And see, you expect that he's just going to do the stalactite drop again, but instead your character actually climbs on top of him to try to stab him in the head, which is really cool. Like I said, it gives your character some more personality. I think personality for characters in rail shooters is sorely lacking. And again, I get it, it's a rail shooter, but it's still just a nice little touch. That's something that wouldn't have been expected of them in the genre, but they did it, and so it's really nice. Maybe giving you full sub-weapon ammo makes things a little bit too easy when you continue. I don't know. I think that the attempt to balance full range sub-weapons and melee combat in a rail shooter, super interesting idea. And I think they're like just off the cusp of greatness in the way they handled it. There's still some, I don't know if you'd call it wonkiness, I don't know if you'd call it imbalance. I guess imbalance would be the better word. There's still some imbalance there with that kind of dichotomy between melee and shooting and what you can shoot and what you can't shoot and how much ammo you have and all the above. I think they just needed a little bit more tuning on that, but I still think it's a great touch. It's a very interesting concept. And like I said, they were not the first rail shooter to have melee combat. There was this samurai game we used to have at our arcade years ago, where you would hold, it was pretty much the exact same controller, except it was more like a sword. And it was pretty much all sword combat. Like you would just slash at, like diagrams would come up on the enemy and tell you where to slash, and you would have to do it in time or you'd lose. I do not know the name of that game. I'm going to have to look it up after I do this video and see if I can, maybe that's playable on PC now, who knows. The air is stale and warm. However, it feels better than the air underground. Taking a deep breath and looking around, it seems we are outside the castle walls. Who is we? Climbing higher to try to get a better view of the surroundings. It is possible to see a huge clock tower through the dark night fog. Alright, check the remix in this level when it starts. Oh yeah. In case you don't know, that's Wicked Child from the very first Castlevania. And that was also played on the Rampart stage in that game, so it's very fitting they've chosen it for the Rampart stage in this game. Of course, Medusa heads making their appearance for the first time. You got this nice little water mage mini boss that kind of follows you throughout the level. Until she's dead, that is. I spoke too soon. She follows you throughout the beginning of the level. Like I said, this is only my second full playthrough because originally you couldn't make it past stage 1, or stage 2 rather, because the game would just go black and never load, but a fix was released, so I did my very first full playthrough last night. It took me a while to figure out that you automatically pick up hearts in this game. So a lot of rail shooters, when you shoot whatever it is and the power-up pops out, you still have to shoot it to get it. But in this game, immediately after you find it, you picked it up. Werewolf, you have encountered the enemy at the rampart. And of course, we still have to deal with some normal enemies during these boss fights as well. This was one of the easier bosses. I didn't die quite as many times to this guy last time, but I might this time, who knows. This is the one downside of the character having so much agency, is that, and by that I mean the player character, the lady gunner or vampire hunter, whoever, they spin around a lot. So like you saw that section we just had, like she turned around and saw the werewolf, she turned back around and saw the enemies, and so you could kind of tell she was kind of trying to make a decision about which way to run, like which way do I go. That happens quite often, and while it's really neat, it kind of makes it so that you can't quite shoot all the enemies that you want to. Like generally in rail shooters, when you turn around and there's a pack of enemies behind you, you kind of think, oh, okay, I'm going to have to shoot and fight these enemies. But a lot of the times in this game, you'll turn around, see all the enemies, move your cursor to try to shoot them, and then the character immediately whips it back around and goes the other direction. And so it kind of leaves this feeling of incompleteness, like, oh, I didn't get all the enemies I wanted to. I figured this out last night. You can ring this bell to take like a different path. And I wonder if you ring the second or third bell, if that's like a separate path, but we'll just go with this one for now. Because I know it works and it doesn't glitch out. Apparently there is also some sort of whip crack mechanic that like you whip a certain way and it cracks the whip and does more damage, but I don't know if you can do it on a mouse, and I don't know if it's like I don't know what signifies that. We're coming up on the famous clock tower segment now. There's always a clock tower segment in these games. At least the classic Castlevanias. After we deal with our second boss of this level, the Harpy. Also, you'll note the very cool remix of Cross Your Heart from Haunted Castle being played here. See, I got a heart bonus for combo points. What other game lets you shoot at tornadoes? Has there ever been a boss in a rail shooter that used tornadoes? Leave it in the comments below if that's been a thing. I feel like Dragon Gun may have had something like that, but I've never actually finished that one, so I don't know. Dragon Gun, that's a game I didn't expect to think about today. Oof. I'm sure there's a nice screeching sound effect there and the game's working properly. Beep. Alright, we might as well power up our main weapon to max and then pop up our sub-weapon here. Level 5 is pretty much just bosses. Bosses all the way, so. Hope you like bosses! The sound of the ringing temple bell seemed to clear the dew. What? After a while, a tremendous power appeared solemnly. And again, this game is native Japanese. It was never released in America. There is a English language setting you can turn on. Presumably they location tested in Europe, and that's probably what that came from. But it was just a location test, and so the English is not final. That's probably why it's so... It's not bad, but it's definitely off. Like, as a native speaker, you read that, and it kind of ticks a box in your head. It's like, hey, that's a little strange. Oh, that guy fell off face first. Medusa heads. Somebody get this guy out of here. There's some really cool acrobatics with your character in this level that we're going to see coming up. That scared me to death the first time I played it, that Medusa head jump scare there. Of course, we got the classic Simon's Theme remix going on. I risked freezing the game there to get that candle on the edge of the screen. Fortunately, it didn't. So you see that my first inclination is very dangerous. My character's first inclination is let's climb up the cogwheels. Try not to get smushed in the middle of them. Oops, sorry dude. Sub-weapon has now reached the point where we can one-shot most of these regular guys. It'd be even stronger if I didn't have to restart earlier, but... oh well. I think if you whip that rod right there, that handle, you can jump on it and climb up, but I always forget it. I wasn't able to do it last time either. I assume there's some sort of alternate path there. Hey, we're back again. I'm sorry for the jump cut. Same issue. Accidentally clicked off and killed the whole process, so we just had to restart. Once again, I've reset my sub-weapon level and everything to 0, but can't be helped. I don't want to have to play through the whole thing again. There's already been enough jump cuts to try to salvage this train wreck of a system. I really hope they get the windowed mode working before too long so that this is not an issue. But it is what it is. And we're going to go ahead and finish out the game now, hopefully with no issue. Although the boss fights are going to take a little longer because we're not quite as strong, but I think it'll be okay. Oh yay, we got our silver bullet back. Again, I wish I could have shown you more of the other bullets, but unfortunately, because of the way the game refuses to load levels in windowed mode, we can't use it. So restarts are sadly going to be a thing with this game for the time being. Excuse me. So a lot of people have pointed out, and I actually agree, Death in this game is actually harder than the final boss. If you're wondering about the sub-weapon usage to heart ratio, most hearts give you 2 hearts. And sub-weapons, the basic shot takes 1, others take like up to 3, I think. So yes, it is worth it usually to shoot candles and get a heart because you'll get 2 for your trouble, but I would always use the standard bullet to do it. I would never use the special ones. Kind of funny to think about this lady from the east just using a gun to shoot the Grim Reaper to death. Silver bullets do a little bit more damage, but using up all of our sub-weapon ammo very quickly. I imagine for the people that plowed through this thing in the arcade, this definitely took a lot of their money and their health away. Excuse me. Alright, sorry we had to do another jump cut here because once again, click off the window, the entire game crashes. So I just kind of jumped ahead to this point in the fight because at this point Death starts doing some stuff he doesn't do at the bottom. I mean at the start of the fight. So for example, he has an attack where he basically picks you up in the air and drops you. But at some point you stay in the rafters instead of like having to hit him enough so that he drops you. So we're about to death half health here. And so you can see he's doing some different attacks, not at the beginning of the phase. Again, I greatly apologize for the jump cuts and the kind of weirdness with this playthrough. But again, it's just kind of, them's the breaks right now if you want to play through this game. I suppose I could have disconnected my other monitor so that I just played it full screen and that was it, but that thought unfortunately did not occur to me until about like 75% of the way through this playthrough. So I said, you know what, per algorithm statistics, most of you aren't going to watch this far in the video anyway, and if you do, you probably just skip to the end so you can see what the ending of the game was. So hey, it'll be alright. See, these enemies taking a bit more time to kill than I would like because I don't have any of my upgrades that the game expects you to have at this point. Like, I assume if you just played extremely poorly you would have no upgrades, but I don't know. It's very easy to meet the target score unless you're just like dying constantly, so. Unfortunately, taking us very many shots to finish off each skeleton there. At this point though, Death knows he can't beat me. He knows I have too much artificial money, and that I will just continue my way through his nonsense attacks. So there you go, there's Death. Probably the hardest boss in the game, honestly. If you were playing at the arcade, this would be the one that I would not look forward to. The next one is not near as tough. Welcome, visitor. Please forgive my servants for their behavior on your journey here. I do wonder if the game has voice acting for these cutscenes when the sound effects are working. Okay, and this is, I believe this is a graphical glitch now, because this is not how this fight looked when I did it last night. You could actually see like his face and texture and everything. So again, like I said, there's still a lot of bugs to work out with this thing. Hopefully the lighting will fix itself here in a second. But for now, we're just going to get this Shadow Drac fight, it looks like. Oh yeah, okay, there he is. Well, for a second. Nice Skullomania face he had there for a second. Oh no, it's the polygon attack. Alright, we've reached phase 2. Most of the bosses in this have a phase 2 that they just automatically drop into a cutscene and do something different when you get their health to half. And that includes Dracula here. Unfortunately, the game is having a visual heart attack, so we can't really see what's going on. Like I said, I intend to do multiple playthroughs of this for the channel, just to kind of show off the whole thing. So when those happen, hopefully we'll get a playthrough where the graphical glitches don't happen, and we can actually see this boss as he's supposed to be. And I don't know if this is just happening because it's the Lady Gunner. I don't know if it's this PC. I don't know if it's just something that happens randomly with this game. I'm not sure. Like I said, last night when I played through this did not happen. He looked like this all of the time. You could actually see what was going on. And at this point I'm just striking, hoping we get a hit because can't see what's going on, sadly. I don't know how you're supposed to dodge that attack. It seems like whether you whip or shoot that orb, it just never goes away. I'm sure there's some way that you're intended to do that, but I don't know how. There we go. Hopefully it clears up for the ending at least. I assume that the three different characters have different endings. We're going to find out. Like I said, this is my first time clearing the game with a Lady Gunner. Don't know exactly what her story end will be, but we'll find out. Hopefully it looks better than this here. A lot of people have reported that there's strange things that happen depending on the graphics card. Like I'm using an NVIDIA card. I think my other's an AMD.
Who destroyed the village and terrorized the people was defeated by the Lady Gunner. Then, Castlevania vanished, and the fog cleared, revealing the beautiful country again.
In the morning, the fog cleared, and we were able to see clearly again. A silver-haired lady with a large gun in her hand was seen walking from the village.
The female warrior disappeared after the battle. Her whereabouts is unknown.
Her whereabouts is unknown. I guarantee you there was some English voice actor reading that line, like pleading with them to let him say "are," but they wouldn't let him, so he had to say "is" because it was what was written on the paper. So anyway, that's Castlevania The Arcade as the Lady Gunner. I'll tell you that the Vampire Hunter's ending is the exact same, except you replace the instances of Lady Gunner with Vampire Hunter, and it's just like he's never seen again. It's a pretty fun rail shooter experience. It's got some really interesting ideas. It's a great adaptation of Castlevania to a rail shooter. I really enjoyed it. I just hope that more patches from the team that is diligently working on this comes out so that we can play it a little bit closer to what it was intended to be. Again, shout outs to Video Game Esoterica and his YouTube channel and all his Discord people who are over there working hard on this, trying to make it work. To the D-Mule Shooter team and everybody else. Really appreciate you guys' hard work in helping us to preserve the rarest Castlevania. So because of this now, I can say that I've played and finished pretty much every single Castlevania game there is, with the exception of like the Pachinko games and Grimoire of Souls. So it's really great to play this one and just know that there are people out there who are trying to preserve games so that everybody can experience them one day. So thanks so much for watching. If you're still here and you made it to the end, be sure to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. My gigantic Castlevania 64 retrospective is in development now. I've already started editing and recording audio and doing all the fun gags and memes that you've come to know and love. You're going to really like that. So do stick around and be on the lookout for this. Maybe this video will hold you over. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Have a great day.